What would you do if the man you ignored every morning, the one who carried your bags, opened your doors, and remained politely silent, suddenly began speaking perfect Mandarin, Arabic, and Spanish on back-to-back international business calls? That's the exact moment Evelyn Rothschild, heiress to a luxury fashion empire, realized she may have just fired the only man who could save her company. Evelyn prided herself on being efficient. She ran her mornings like a well-oiled Swiss timepiece. Her marble foyer gleamed under the early light as she checked her Cartier for the second time. 8:01 a.m., 1 minute late. She rolled her eyes and sighed. The black Mercedes finally slid up the driveway, and the driver stepped out. A tall black man in a fitted navy suit, shoes shined like obsidian. "Good morning, Mrs. Rothschild. I'm Darren King, your assigned executive driver," he said smoothly, offering his hand. Evelyn didn't take it. She brushed past him with her signature air of polished disdain. "Just be on time and don't talk unless you have to. I have 3 investor calls today. I don't need distractions." Darren simply nodded and opened the car door. "Understood, ma'am." Now, I've worked around people like Evelyn. I know the type. Rich, insulated, convinced they know everything, but terrified of anything they don't understand. What she didn't realize was that Darren had spent more years in international negotiation rooms than she had at boardroom tables. But to her, he was just a driver, and worse, a driver she didn't trust. On the ride to her first meeting, Evelyn called her assistant. "Stacy, background check the new driver. You know how these people are. He's too calm, too proper, like he's hiding something." She didn't lower her voice. She wanted Darren to hear. He did, but Darren had long mastered the art of silence. He had spent his whole life being underestimated. And now, as Evelyn scrolled through her emails, oblivious to the storm building behind her careless assumptions, he kept his hands on the wheel and his face blank. What Evelyn didn't know, and probably wouldn't have believed, is that Darren spoke 9 languages fluently. He held a PhD in international economic relations. Before choosing a quieter life, he'd served as a cultural liaison at the United Nations, mediating billion-dollar deals between countries that could barely stand each other. His talent wasn't in driving, it was in reading people, navigating tension, and disarming egos with quiet intelligence. But Evelyn didn't ask. She didn't care. Until one day when everything changed. It was a Friday. Evelyn had a high-stakes lunch meeting with investors from Beijing. She was panicked. "They don't speak English well, Stacy. I need this deal. I need someone who understands their culture." Then, as if the universe wanted to mock her, she muttered under her breath, "Too bad we don't have anyone who speaks their language." Darren heard that, and for the first time he hesitated. "Actually, ma'am," he said cautiously, "I do speak Mandarin." Evelyn blinked at him through the rearview mirror. "Excuse me?" "I studied in Shanghai for 4 years," he continued. "I've worked with Chinese diplomats." She cut him off. "Why would a driver speak Mandarin? Are you making this up?" "No, ma'am." "Stay in the car," she snapped as they pulled up to the restaurant. "This is important business. Don't embarrass me." So he waited in the car. An hour later, Evelyn came out fuming. "These people are impossible. They were offended I called their strategy exotic." "How is that offensive? They started muttering something in Chinese like I wouldn't notice." Darren's voice was steady. "If I may, ma'am, exotic can carry negative connotations." "Oh, don't start," she barked. "I don't need lectures from the help." But it was already too late. Her deal had fallen apart, and the one person who could have saved it was sitting 20 feet away in a Mercedes, too dignified to beg her for respect. That night, Darren got a call on his private line. "Dr. King," said a voice in fluent Arabic, "we need your advice on the textile dispute with the Saudi delegation." Evelyn, walking past his car in the driveway, froze. The unfamiliar language, rich, flowing, startled her. She narrowed her eyes. The next morning it happened again. Mandarin this time, then Yoruba, then Spanish. Darren juggled calls in multiple languages, each with the calm authority of someone deeply experienced. Evelyn's paranoia spiked. "What is this?" she hissed after sliding into the back seat. "All these phone calls, all this foreign babble. What language were you speaking?" Yoruba, ma'am, just consulting with... Consulting? She cut in. You're a driver. Who exactly are you consulting with? Who do you think you are? Darren didn't answer. He didn't need to. Her suspicions spiraled into something darker. The more she heard Darren speak, the more convinced she became that he was hiding something. Arabic, Chinese, Spanish. What's next, Russian? Am I harboring some kind of international spy in my own car? She joked to Stacy. It wasn't a joke. She called the driving service and demanded full background checks. She texted her assistant in a panic. Get his phone records. He's speaking code. Probably involved in something illegal. Let me pause here and say, if you've ever faced this kind of suspicion just for being smart while black, you know the bitter taste Darren was swallowing every day. That hollow pain of being seen as a threat just for being better than expected. Evelyn couldn't understand why someone like Darren, polished, well-spoken, brilliant, would choose to drive for a living. That disconnect made her afraid, and fear mixed with prejudice. That's a dangerous cocktail. 3 days later, she snapped. Pull over, she barked mid-drive. Darren eased the car onto the shoulder, confused. I'm done playing games, she hissed. I've heard you speak 4 different languages this week. You've taken shady calls. You won't tell me the truth. I'm calling the police. Ma'am, I assure you, I've done nothing wrong. No innocent man speaks Arabic on a chauffeur salary. Darren looked at her, calm, composed, heartbroken. I speak Arabic because I've spent my life bridging cultures. I worked with ambassadors, CEOs, peacekeepers. I've helped countries avoid war. You never asked who I was. You just assumed. You're fired, she said coldly. Get out of the car. And he did, not with a shout, not with anger, but with quiet grace. I'll call the service to send you a new driver. Take care, Mrs. Rothschild. As Darren walked away, Evelyn sneered under her breath. Unbelievable. Who does he think he is? But the real question, dear viewer, is this. Who had she just fired? Because in just a few days, Evelyn Rothschild would realize she hadn't let go of a driver. She discarded the one man who could have saved her company, her reputation, and perhaps even herself. And the clock was already ticking. 3 weeks had passed since Evelyn Rothschild fired Darren King, and everything was falling apart. Her fashion empire's international expansion, once the crown jewel of her strategy, was on the verge of collapse. The Chinese investors had backed out. The Saudi textile deal was on ice. And now Roberto Santos, the Spanish investor with deep ties in South America, was demanding cultural guarantees before finalizing any deal. Mrs. Rothschild, Roberto's voice echoed through her office speakerphone. We must insist on proper protocol for our meeting. We're not just investing in products, we're investing in people. Your company must show understanding of our values, or we walk. Evelyn's manicured fingers drummed nervously on the glass desk. Of course, Roberto, you'll have the full cultural support team in place. Absolutely. But she was lying. She had no such team. And worse, she had no idea where to even start. Stacy, her assistant, burst in moments later. Victoria, he's serious. They're giving us one last chance. If we don't show up prepared, this deal dies. I need a cultural consultant, Evelyn muttered. Someone who speaks Spanish fluently, understands the etiquette, the traditions. Where's the list you pulled? Stacy handed her a folder. Evelyn flipped through it. Consultants, all booked or charging more than the budget could handle on such short notice. Most were generalists. None had Darren's calm authority or proven experience. And that's when it hit her. Darren. She paused, the name hanging in her mind like a ghost. Didn't he? She mumbled to herself, her voice catching. Yes, Stacy answered hesitantly. He spoke Spanish. Fluent, from what I remember. Evelyn closed the folder. The shame flushed over her cheeks like heat. She had accused this man, this multilingual, quietly brilliant man, of being a security threat because he dared to speak Arabic. She had labeled his Mandarin gibberish, his Yoruba code, his intelligence suspicious. And now, he was the only one who could save her. But how do you go back to someone you've humiliated? She didn't have time to overthink it. The Santos meeting was in 36 hours. She had no translator, no consultant, and no idea how to approach Latin business culture respectfully. If she walked into that room unprepared again, her company's future would be ashes. Evelyn left her office and headed downtown, a place she rarely went alone. Stacy had mentioned seeing Darren drop off someone at the Grand Ariston, a luxury hotel known for hosting international consultants and diplomats. As her car pulled up to the entrance, she spotted him, Darren, standing at the valet, dressed in a tailored charcoal gray suit, leather briefcase in hand, speaking Spanish into his phone. "No, Senora Petrov, the proposed merger must account for textile heritage laws. You risk violating Articles 12 through 15 if you don't build the cultural clause in from the start." Evelyn couldn't move. Her breath caught. He wasn't just speaking Spanish, he was leading. And he wasn't bluffing. His tone was precise, his vocabulary advanced, his poise unmistakably professional. She wasn't watching a driver anymore. She was watching a strategist, a man leagues above her own business partners. She stepped out of the car, heart pounding. When Darren ended the call and turned toward the lobby, she called out, "Darren!" He stopped, turned. For a brief moment, his expression remained unreadable, calm, guarded. But beneath the professionalism was a flicker of pain. "Mrs. Rothschild, I need to speak with you." He gave a faint nod and gestured toward the hotel cafe. Moments later, they sat across from each other. Evelyn, usually so composed, now looked small. Her voice, usually sharp, trembled. "I saw you, just now, outside, speaking about the merger." He waited, hands folded. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." "No, you didn't," he said quietly. "But you made sure I knew that every day." Evelyn lowered her eyes. "I treated you horribly. I accused you of, God, of being dangerous. Because of your language, your background. Because I was afraid." "That fear didn't come from what I did," Darren said, his tone even. "It came from what you assumed when you saw someone like me doing something you didn't expect." She nodded, tears forming. "You're right. I was wrong. I was ignorant." A pause. "Then why are you here, Mrs. Rothschild?" She wiped her eyes. "Because I need help. Roberto Santos, the Spanish investor, is giving me one last shot. I need someone who understands how to speak with him. Not just the words, the culture, the nuance. And there's no one else I know who can do it like you." Darren didn't respond right away. Finally, he said, "3 weeks ago, I offered that knowledge freely. You dismissed it. You accused me of being a threat." "I know," she whispered. "I don't deserve your help." He leaned forward. "Then why should I help you now?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "Because you're better than me. Because despite everything, you still have the grace to sit here. Because maybe you believe in building bridges. And because right now you're the only person who can save more than my company. You might save my soul too." That line struck something in Darren. He saw it now. Not just guilt in her eyes, but humility. A rare, genuine kind of regret. "I'll help," he said, "but on my terms." "Of course," she said quickly. "Anything. I'm not your driver anymore. I'm a consultant, a strategist. I'm not here to serve. I'm here to lead." Evelyn nodded. "Yes, please." That afternoon, they returned to her office. Stacy did a double take when she saw Darren. "This is Dr. Darren King," Evelyn said clearly. "He's our new Director of International Strategy, effective immediately." Over the next 12 hours, Darren transformed everything. He threw out the old presentation, scrapped the cold numbers, first strategy, brought in seating charts based on cultural norms, rewrote scripts for the meeting, rehearsed with Evelyn, showing her how to open with a story about her late grandfather, something Roberto's family values would respect. "Spanish business isn't about speed," Darren explained. "It's about trust, about connection. Show him your legacy, not your ledger." That night, Evelyn stood in her office watching Darren pace the room as he spoke fluent Spanish into another call. "Yes, Mr. Duarte, we're prepared to honor your traditions. No surprises, full transparency. You'll be heard, always." She leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. How could she have missed this? How could she have looked at this man and seen only a driver? And how, after all she had done to push him away, was he still willing to help? That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about a business deal anymore. It was about redemption. Because sometimes the only way to rebuild something you destroyed is to start by honoring the person you shattered. The following morning, the conference room looked completely different. Not in decor, but in energy. Gone were the sleek, aggressive boardroom layouts Evelyn used to favor. In their place was something warmer, more intentional, a round table setup, seating positions that placed Roberto Santos directly across from Evelyn, flanked by Darren on one side and Stacy on the other. Small but thoughtful touches, a Spanish flag pin placed discreetly next to Roberto's name card, regional snacks from Madrid on the side table, had all been Darren's doing. But it wasn't the aesthetics that changed the room. It was the presence of Darren King. He stood tall in a slate gray suit, tailored to perfection, posture calm but commanding. As the investors entered, he stepped forward and greeted them fluently in Spanish. Not textbook, robotic Spanish, but lyrical, culturally tuned speech. He opened not with business, but with warmth. Señor Santos, es un honor recibirle. La señora Rothschild me ha hablado de la historia de su familia. Su abuelo fundó la empresa en 1952, ¿no es cierto? Roberto lit up. Sí, veo que ha hecho su tarea. Evelyn sat back in awe. She didn't say a word. This wasn't her time to lead, it was Darren's. And he was conducting a symphony. He smoothly transitioned between Spanish and English to include everyone. He interpreted body language, subtly steered conversations away from tension points, and told stories that bridged cultural gaps with precision. Every comment Darren made reflected deep understanding, not just of business, but of people. By the end of the 2-hour meeting, Roberto was smiling. Senora Rothschild, he said as they shook hands, your cultural advisor has been instrumental. This partnership feels right. We look forward to a long future together. When they left, Evelyn exhaled. You did it. Darren looked at her evenly. No, we did it. You trusted me. Later that day, Evelyn stood before her company's board of directors, a group of mostly white, mostly male executives who had grown increasingly skeptical about her leadership. They knew about Darren. They had questions. Board member Charles Weller, a man who often confused skepticism for wisdom, raised a hand. Victoria, isn't this a bit extreme? Promoting someone who was recently just a driver? Now he's speaking for us internationally? Dr. Darren King, Evelyn said pointedly, holds a PhD in international relations from Georgetown. He's fluent in 9 languages. He was a diplomat for 8 years at the United Nations, where he negotiated peace and trade deals between conflicting nations. He's not just qualified, he's overqualified. But his background... What about it, Charles? Evelyn snapped. Are you concerned because he's black? Or because he was behind a steering wheel instead of a conference table? The silence in the room was thunderous. I was concerned too, Evelyn admitted. Not long ago, I let my fears and my privilege blind me. I judged a brilliant man by the seat he sat in. I saw languages I didn't understand and assumed danger, not intelligence. And I was wrong. Her voice shook. But this company is no longer led by fear. It's led by truth. And truth is, Darren King has done more for this company in 1 week than any of us did in a year. She paused. If any of you have a problem with that, the problem isn't him. It's you. The board voted, unanimously. Darren was promoted to Senior Director of International Strategy with full equity, and Charles Weller quietly pushed out over the following quarter. But the story doesn't end there. Months later, the company had expanded into 4 new countries. Revenue was up 38%, but more importantly, its culture had shifted. Respect, inclusion, and humility weren't corporate buzzwords. They were daily practice. 1 year later, Evelyn sat in the audience at the International Business Ethics Conference in Geneva. On stage was Darren King, delivering the keynote address to hundreds of global leaders. True international success, he said into the microphone, requires more than fluent words. It demands a fluent heart. Humility is a language too, and if we can't speak it, we can't lead. The crowd stood in ovation. Evelyn clapped, misty-eyed. After the event, reporters swarmed. Dr. King, what inspired you to return to global consulting after working in a less conventional role? He smiled gently. I stepped away from diplomacy to find work that felt honest. But sometimes in unexpected places, you find the chance to lead again. I just had to be seen. That night, Evelyn met Darren in the hotel's rooftop lounge. I keep thinking about who I was a year ago, she admitted, and how easily I could have ruined both our futures. But you didn't, he replied. You saw it, you owned it, and you changed. I still feel ashamed, she whispered. Then let that shame turn into resolve, he said. Use your story. Tell it. Teach it. Evelyn nodded. She did tell the story. In speeches, in articles, in mentoring circles. Not as the heroine, but as the cautionary tale. Because that was the truth. And Darren? He went on to co-found a global consultancy firm focused on ethical business diplomacy. His name was now synonymous with trust and transformation. So if you're still watching this video, here's my message to you. This story isn't just about a driver or a CEO. It's about what happens when we finally stop looking at people through the lens of fear and start seeing them for their brilliance. It's about how many gifted voices we silence simply because they don't sound like our own. It's about how Darren King spoke 9 languages. But Evelyn Rothschild finally learned the one that mattered most: respect.